So good afternoon, and thank you for being here because it's the 13th of May, of course, as you know, 2026, and it's the day of the King's Speech. The King's Speech was this morning, and it's made late payments part of something that's bigger than just a finance conversation. It's part now of a movement about leadership, about fairness, and the culture of business itself. So today, the issue of late payments finally made it into the King's Speech. And in the coming year, we're going to see the UK having the toughest regulations against late and slow payment of any other country in the world. So today's speech is very timely, because what this means is that payments has gone from a back office issue to front page news. So how did we get here? Well, 6 years ago, prompted by the financial devastation of the COVID pandemic, I began a journey sparked by one simple question. Why do some companies take so long to pay their suppliers? And as business leaders, why have we let this become acceptable for so long? And when I say so long, I actually do mean quite a long time, because you've all seen the newspaper clips of horror stories of companies taking a long time to pay. These are newspaper clips you will have seen before, companies taking 50, 60, even 70 days to pay. The surprising thing is the date on these newspaper clips is 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago. So this is a problem that has been around a long time, and despite all of the new technology that's come along in the last 40 years to help people pay faster, we're now seeing payment terms of 90 days, 100 days, and 120 days still. So that hasn't solved the problem. Now, back in 2020, being new to payment culture, I was told by a lot of folks in finance that it was a technical problem, why companies weren't paying fast. A delay in the processing, or a system upgrade, or something to do with cash flow optimization. But the more I peeled back the layers, the clearer it became that payment behavior isn't a system issue at all. It's a human issue. It's all about how leadership behaves when the cameras aren't rolling. Now, I've worked in business for many years, helping companies communicate how well they treat their customers or how well they treat their employees, and they certainly like to show off those behaviors. But what I found was that the way companies treat their suppliers and their payment culture was something that companies didn't want to talk about very much. I quickly realized that payment culture was a human issue, just the same as when you're having building work done on the house at home. You decide when you're going to pay the builder, today, tomorrow, or maybe you'll make them wait. In companies, even in quite big companies, that's a policy decision that's made by a very few people. It's always the CFO, sometimes, but not always, in conjunction with the CEO. And yes, those organizations are big and complex, but we see every day companies in the same sectors, some pay fast and some pay very slowly. So in 2020, I decided to do something about it and created Good Business Pays. It's a not-for-profit social movement with one aim: to bring the issue of unfair and late payments for small businesses to the top of the national agenda. And with the King's Speech today, I would say we've achieved that. So 6 years on, the work and insights of Good Business Pays and the incredible network of partners and campaigners that work with us, we've learned a lot about payment culture. It tells you everything about how an organization behaves under pressure. Just look at how similar companies doing similar things behave differently. So what these charts show here, you can see the green is the percentage of invoices that they pay in under 30 days. Yellow is when they pay their invoices between 30 and 60 days, and red is over 60. And you've got two water companies on the right-hand side, United Utilities, Yorkshire Water, either side of the Pennines. One is paying most of their invoices very, very fast. The other isn't, doing the same thing. On the left-hand side, you've got Joe Malone, who pays most of their suppliers very, very fast, and ASOS, who does the opposite. ASOS, of course, not only being a fashion retailer, but online. So you would think that they would be working faster. Yeah. So once you start looking at this kind of data closely, late payment stops looking like an operational glitch and it starts to look like a behavior and a signal of deeper priorities. A company that pays late or slow is making a deliberate choice. And it's saying, quietly, our needs matter more than your needs. And that choice creates ripples into the supply chain. Because suppliers, particularly the smaller ones, depend on their customers. They rely on prompt and fair payment to help them prioritize, invest, and importantly for the bigger company, choose where to put their best people. Now, many CFOs get this. They absolutely do, but a lot more don't. And when I talk to CFOs, I often hear the same rationalizations. We need to manage our working capital. Our payment systems take time, or it's standard in our industry. But behind those phrases are real consequences for real people. The supplier who's trying to cover payroll, the small business juggling credit cards to bridge weeks of silence while they try and chase invoices, and the partnership that turns sour because trust has been eroded by delays. Payment data is a language, and if you know how to read it, it tells you a story about the character of an organization, and it tells you about how an organization uses its power to define fairness. And I've seen two kinds of CFO. They are the controllers, who hoard cash to meet quarterly targets, sometimes at the expense of their supplier ecosystem, and the collaborators, and many of them, good business partners who see suppliers as strategic allies who pay promptly, they innovate together, and they understand that liquidity is a shared resource. The difference between these two types of CFOs isn't financial literacy. Both of them are brilliant. The difference is a leadership mindset, the willingness to see trust and time as capital, and to understand the value of good business partnerships over just transactional relationships. When a company delays payments, it's easy to justify, but over time, those small acts aggregate into culture, and culture, as we know, becomes brand. So yes, paying late may be legal, at least for now, but it's never neutral. For decades, supplier payments lived in the back office, invisible to everyone but the finance teams and the auditors. That world is now gone. Mandatory reporting, digital transparency, and the media's interest in corporate accountability have turned payment practices into public data, and public data into reputation signals. Journalists, employees, customers can now see how you treat your supply chain. And now even pension scheme investors use payment data published by Good Business Pays to make their investment decisions. And that's a powerful shift. When I look at a set of company values that usually say integrity, collaboration, respect, and then compare those values to the published payment data, it's often easy to tell whether those words just live in PowerPoint or in practice. Some boards still view prompt payment still as a compliance issue, something to be delegated. But increasingly, forward-thinking firms are realizing that payment discipline is an asset. It says to the market, we run this business with control, with fairness, and with pride. It's what I call the reputation dividend, a return on integrity that compounds just like financial capital. Prompt payment becomes proof of operational excellence, and ethical strength working in harmony. And a good business pays, we knew that from the beginning. We didn't just name and shame the bad payers, but we named and famed the good ones, the fast payers. We recognized them with fast payer awards every year, more than 1,000 of them now. We found that companies weren't being recognized for paying their suppliers fast, so we did that for them. And they enjoyed it. There's many finance directors here enjoying us talking about them in positive terms. And here's the irony, that companies that pay on time don't just have happier suppliers, they often perform better financially too, because when suppliers trust you, they prioritize you and they innovate with you. They help you go faster. And my example, a good one, is Trailfinders, the holiday company. So Trailfinders pay their suppliers in around 11 days. You can imagine their suppliers are tour operators, hotel operators, holiday companies. And Toby, the CEO at Trailfinders, says that when their customers go on holiday, they'll very often get a hotel upgrade room, a bottle of wine in their room, the seats on the plane with a bit more room. Why is that? Because those suppliers say, well, this is a Trailfinders customer, they'll pay us fast, they look after us. So they look after the Trailfinders customer. And when the Trailfinders customer gets back, guess what? They tell all their friends, go on holiday with Trailfinders, you'll get an upgraded room, some wine in the room. All because people got paid faster. That's how you use payment in a clever way when you're in a big company. So good business partnering like that creates good business results. It's not theoretical, it's measurable. We're in a defining area for the finance position. Historically, the finance director's credibility was built on things like liquidity, control, and compliance, and those things still remain important. But now reputation and ethics are part of the same equation. You're not just managing financial capital, you're managing reputational capital. Your supplier payment record is now a visible, external performance metric. As of the beginning of this year, large organizations have to, by law, publish and explain their payment performance in their annual report and accounts. And those figures need to be signed off by the board and the audit committee. So I see 3 shifts in defining modern CFO leadership when it comes to payment culture. The first is transparency. Publish, own, and explain your payment performance. Don't hide behind averages that camouflage extremes. Detailed honesty builds trust faster than perfect numbers. Secondly, policy. Write payment terms that enable your partners to thrive. A 10-day difference can decide whether a small business invests or just survives. And accountability. If you've got late payment metrics, treat them as seriously as you would a missed forecast or a compliance breach, because both signal control failures. Finance isn't just about numbers anymore, it's about values quantified. That's the CFO's reputation moment, a crossroads where stewardship meets character. And we know that more CFOs are moving into CEO roles, so that's going to become even more important. As payment data goes public, it also becomes a board-level issue. If climate metrics reflect a company's environmental ethics, diversity figures reflect its social ethics, and payment culture reflects its commercial ethics. This is an example of how you can see some of that on the Good Business Bay's website. You can look up a company, you can see roughly how long it takes to pay its suppliers, 53 days in the case of Superdry, paying 90% of their invoices late, and alongside that, a financial risk profile. So you can see from the company's annual reports over the last 5 years whether it's a risky client for you to take on or not. All that information is now available free of charge, no registration required, on the Good Business Pays website. And we're seeing investors digging into these payment reports as early indicators of management quality. And the logic is straightforward. If a company can't run supplier relationships with discipline, with fairness, can it handle larger, multifaceted stakeholder systems? And those boards are beginning to ask tough questions. What story does our payment performance tell? Does it align with our purpose and our narrative? Are we modeling the behavior we say we champion? And there are lessons here, lessons for business about values. You can pick up company values from any big company's annual report. They usually say something like this, and this is a real one, lift and drop from an annual report, talking about the vision to be a trusted partner for providing great services, caring values, achieving together, improving and delivering, and their values shape the way they do business. Could be any company. For those of you that are interested in recent history, the company that this comes from is a company called Carillion in 2016, who went bust when their payment culture caused problems like this. 3,000 jobs lost, 75,000 people working in its supply chain, 7 billion of debts, etc., etc. So the values mean nothing if they're not translated into real actions, and this is why payment culture is now very much a reputational issue. So 5 years ago, payment culture, late payments was just accepted as a way of doing business. As of the King's speech today and the laws that will come in the next 12 months, that'll be the past. Everyone in the payment world, B2B payment world, talks about late payment problems as a problem that needs solving. We've seen through our own tracking more than 2,000 big businesses slash their payment terms. We've given 1,000 awards away. More small businesses than ever talk about the problems caused by late payment. The laws are being strengthened. The Small Business Commissioner is being given powers to enforce fines on late paying companies. There's going to be mandatory interest payments on late paid interest of 8% over the base interest rate, so 12% of interest on late payments. And in the public sector, if you sell to the public sector, you're guaranteed 30-day payments in the Public Sector Procurement Act. So we're moving from just describing what the problem is to saying, okay, how are we going to fix this thing? We can't stop a policy because culture will always outrun compliance. And the standout organizations are those that treat prompt payment not just as an ethical box to tick, but part of their DNA, something to take pride in and celebrate and inspire others. Paying well will be the shorthand for leading well. We're moving ourselves onto defining what good business partnering means. We've proven that visibility and accountability can drive change, and we've studied our fast payers over the last 6 years, those companies that pay fast all the time, every year, as part of their DNA. What else do they do beyond paying fast to make sure small businesses and their suppliers succeed? Well, we've been able to bottle it. And that chapter is what we call good business partnering, turning fairness into partnership that helps the suppliers grow as well as the big company grow. Because once you fix the flow of money, you uncover deeper questions about how do you collaborate better? How do you build relationships founded on mutual success? How do you design ecosystems where suppliers and customers are co-creators, not just contractors? So good business partnering is about shifting from a transactional mindset into a relationship one, where resilience is shared and innovation flows both ways. It's how modern supply chains will thrive through transparency, respect, and co-investment of outcomes. That could mean data sharing, it could mean joint sustainability, shared forecasting systems, or even paying early in exchange for innovation dividends. We've learned a lot about what how trust is built in this volatile economy. And a trust is a currency that keeps organizations resilient. So as we look forward, the question isn't just about how fast you pay, but how well do you partner? After 6 years of studying payment behavior, engaging with finance leaders and watching the slow but steady cultural shift, I've learned one truth. How you pay is how you lead. When you pay fairly, you build trust. When you pay promptly, you fuel resilience. And when you pay with integrity, you model the kind of leadership that people want to follow. So if you want to know more about the work of Good Business Pays and want to look up how fast your customers pay, it's that QR code that leads you to our website. It's all free. You don't have to register to use it. And if you would like to know more about good business partnering, then do let me know.